Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Read Riot, a Pussy Riot guide to activism, is a timely guide to radical protest as we endure this current administration. Nadya Tolokonnikova is a conceptual artist and political activist from Russia and the founder of the art collective Pussy Riot. In 2012, she was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment following an anti-Putin performance in Moscow's Cathedral of Christ the Savior. Shortly after her release in 2013, Nadya created Media Zona, an independent Russian news service, and the Zona Prava, a prisoners' rights non-governmental organization. She has spoken before the U.S. Congress, the British Parliament, and the European Parliament, and is a Lenin Ono Grant for Peace recipient and a co-recipient of the Hannah Arendt Prize for Political Thought. Shepard Fairey was born in Charleston, South Carolina. He received his BFA in illustration from RISD. In 1989, he created the Andre the Giant Has a Posse sticker that transformed into the Obey Giant art campaign, with imagery that has changed the way people see art and the urban landscape. After 29 years, his work has evolved into an acclaimed body of art, which includes the 2008 Hope portrait of Barack Obama. Just recently, Fairey again teamed up with Amplifier to launch We the Future, a campaign featuring young leaders from social change movements, working to address important issues and get art and supporting education tools into more than 20,000 classrooms. We're delighted to have both Nadya Tolokonnikova and Shepard Fairey with us this evening. Please help me join and welcome them.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Hello.
I feel very honored to interview Nadya because she really practices what she preaches. It's a lot more rare than it should be. I followed what was happening when she and Masha were incarcerated, and we spoke briefly on a panel afterward here in LA at Max Sennett, and what she'd endured was very moving to me, and her resilience and still, courage to push forward with her ideas. But reading this book, which I got it the day it came out. What was that? Wednesday? Last Wednesday? When did it come out?
I didn't remember.
Well, you just mentioned
it
that
happened all of a sudden.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all I've been reading for the last few days.
But I really appreciate you reading it, because when I wrote it, I thought that there is no chance that even one person on Earth will read it, and now Shepard Fairey is reading this book.
Well, yeah, a lot more people will be too. But I think that it's something that pretty much everybody should read. I think that there are so many great ideas about art, music, activism. Just the basic way to live your life meaningfully in this book, without it coming across as self-righteous or didactic. So, which I think can be very, very tough in this world. I think that all of us have experienced somebody that loves to hear the sound of their own voice. I think you're far more generous than that. So that's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. But anyway, let's just dive into it. At the very beginning of the book, you talk about how you at 14 wanted to write an article for the newspaper about pollution and climate change, and and you were told to do something else. Come back later when you have something that's more traditional, I guess. But what brought you to that? What made you want to be a writer? What kind of that fire in you?
They actually told me that I should write an article about the zoo, and they told me that it's much more appropriate for 13 or 14 years old girl to write about the zoo, and I did. I love animals, and I wrote about the zoo, but I still wanted to write about environmental issues because that's where the animals live, not only in the zoo. And I was growing up in a small provincial town. It's one of the smallest and the most polluted and the northest, the coldest cities on Earth. And the bad news about this town is that it's kind of like Venus, the planet. It has acid rains, and it's raining with sulfuric acid over there. And when the snow starts to fall down, and the snow starts there in the beginning of September, and in a matter of half an hour it becomes gray, and then in another half an hour it becomes black. So when I first time went to Moscow when I was a little kid, I was like, oh, the snow actually can be white. I didn't know about it. So obviously when I was 14 years old, I decided to make my small investigation about what's going on. And I was lucky girl because my father was really politically involved, and he treated me as an equal human being. So he helped me. We went to the library. We started to surf on the internet, though at the time it was not that easy to get access to internet. Yes, I am old. And And then they told me just write about the zoo, and the reason was really interesting. You understand why, and that's the thing that they always say to us. You understand, and I'm like, no, I don't understand. I don't understand why, and I'm asking them why. You understand because we are all really connected to these three factories that surround our city, and we rely economically on these factories, and we cannot write anything bad about them. And after that, I didn't become a journalist because I understood that I will have a hard time being a journalist if I just don't like censorship. I just don't really buy it. And I decided to study philosophy instead, to go deeper to the core of this issue, to understand why such a censorship can exist in my country, and what could I do with it possibly.
Well, I mean, you're creating your own forms of media now, which I think are connecting with a lot of people. I know it's more of you mentioned it's more of a difficult thing to achieve in Russia because there's not a large market for independent media, but we'll touch on that later. I want to explore your development a little bit more. You mentioned in the book that you discovered Riot Girl, punk rock, feminist punk rock, and that was a big influence. And then you and some of your fellow students or art collaborators were going to do a project on feminist punk rock in Russia, and you realized it didn't exist, so you had to create it, and that's how Pussy Riot started. I mean, so tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it started because of confusion, because we actually promised that we will give a lecture, and the problem with I'm really surprised with you being prepared, because I'm never prepared. So I'm just trying to get something from my ass, like just for 4 hours before. And so like 4 hours before that lecture, we understood that there is no such thing as punk feminism, though we promised to make a lecture like 1 month ago. And technically we did have this time to realize that there is no fucking punk feminism, and just change the topic. But since the topic was established already, and so we made it up. We said mostly we collected mostly Western punk feminist works, and plus just feminists who were not exactly punks, like Linda Benglis, but we thought that her art form advertisement is pretty punk in the spirit. So we collected these works, and we had to present at least one Russian work, and we, like, don't get me wrong, we do have amazing feminist tradition, and we do have amazing punk tradition, and even female punk tradition in Russia. But like people like Yanka Dягилева, who's really strong female punk singer and songwriter, she doesn't identify herself with feminism, so it would be wrong for me to attribute feminism to her if she doesn't want to define herself feminist. So we created a song in 2 hours before the lecture, and we had no idea how to make songs at the time, because we were conceptual artists, and what conceptual art actually gave me is understanding that you can not care about craft at all, because the concept is the only one thing that matters, and then so you can just do something. Just do something. So we did something. We stole riffs from Oi punk band. I think it was Sham 69, or maybe it was Cockney Rejects.
You reference the kids are united in the book. Yeah, but you said if the kids are united, they will never be defeated, not divided, which I actually think is you should have been writing their lyrics. It's better. but anyway.
No, I do remember that it's divided. It's so wrong that I wrote defeated.
No, it's actually better. It's kind of like ridiculously reflexive. If they're united, they'll never be divided. But anyway.
So we created.
We can argue about that later.
It is impossible song that is impossible to hear, but I still think that it's our best song, because after that we were making songs with, I don't know, with people who are making songs for Christina Aguilera and for Pink, but I still think that first song was the best one. And for a while, I didn't play it at our current concerts, but just recently in Lugo, in Galicia, in Spain, we decided to play this song for the very first time. And the thing about playing this song, we don't know how to play. Like, I don't know how to play the guitar or something. So we're just pushing button on a computer, and the music starts, and I'm screaming something on top of it. And that's how our concert looked like. And and it's fun when people are prepared for it. Like here in Los Angeles, possibly people can't be prepared for something shitty like that. But we somehow ended up being playing at this festival for it was like something like City Day of Lugo, which is amazing but pretty small Spanish town, and I don't think that people there really dig into punk tradition. And so there were a bunch of families, like old ladies and parents with their kids, and me screaming this ridiculous song. And but little kids really liked it. I'm not sure about their parents.
But I mean, that's the beauty of punk rock to me was that it didn't require virtuosity; it required ideas and passion, and that's so liberating. And I know you feel the same way. When people start to become fearful of whether they've lived up to a standard or they've adhered to the orthodoxy, that really kills creativity. And I mean that's a big principle in your book is. Keeping your imagination alive, being weird. And I think that you've latched on to a sort of celebration of like the joy of just being whoever you feel like being. But I think there's a deeper importance to that, which you talk about the powers who have a lot of control and really benefit from defining what's considered normal behavior, and then people subconsciously want to adhere to that. You're encouraging people to break away from that, to broaden the definition of what's normal. Weird can be not weird but normal if everybody pushes out their real selves. I mean, this is something that you're really pushing across. But I mean, explain to me how you feel that first of all that you came to terms with a concept like that, and then how you manage within your art, which music and visual art. But to mesh that with your activism, which activism is frequently scrutinized very seriously. People act like there's no room for fun, but I think there should be.
There is nothing like that in Russian activism. Nothing like that. Rita knows. I mean, no, we are Russian activists. We're living under really enormous pressure. Seriously, sometimes if you really start to allow yourself to fear, then your life will turn into just an endless horror movie. Because the next morning you may wake up and you will learn that the activist who you knew really good, he was killed in front of Kremlin. Another activist was poisoned, like Petr Verzilov, who was my husband at some point, and he's still my amazing comrade and friend. And so we're approaching everything with a lot of satire, I would say, and self-irony. And so I was just talking with my Russian friend who lives here, and she agrees with me that actually, like, Americans here, they're just, for some reason, they over-dramatize things politically. And I'm like, every time when people are in front of me, they're like shaking and they're, we're so afraid of Trump. I'm like, yeah, seriously, do you want to find somebody from North Korea and tell them how are you afraid here in United States of Donald Trump? I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't pay attention on his bad political moves, because like today their move against transgender people is terrible. Like, you should take it seriously, but not panicking about it, because there is any troubles are reason for you to unite and to actually feel better in the end of the story, because you have something to overcome. I mean, that's just pretty much how we approach it in Russia. But maybe I respect if you want to be anxious.
Well, I mean, I think humor is a really important tool for it's therapeutic. It helps people cope and also relate.
You know it better than me. So I'm not explaining it to you, because I know your works.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, one of the things I really liked about the book was your emphasis on sort of reclaiming joy in the process of activism, art, and just sort of weaving into your life these practices that it's not seen as a sacrifice you have to make. It's just seen as how you live to make things better for yourself and others. It's not. I mean, the generosity is, is I think very something that if you read the book is very infectious. The feeling that this is something that is inspiring, and anybody could potentially find a way to integrate. But in the U.S., I definitely feel like when I'm trying to discuss politics with people or activism with people, or even, I'm going to vote. You guys are going to vote, right? Yeah. So, I mean, the idea that this is extra work, that you had to get off Facebook for a minute and have to go actually step outside and put a absentee ballot in a mailbox or walk to a poll.
Yeah, but then you can write a Facebook post about that.
Well, so that that's one of the things.
And it will get more likes. So get out and vote.
Yeah. I mean it's
we should rename this vote booth to selfie booth, right?
The selfie booth. Yeah, there you go. I think so, but, I mean, to get back to Peter being poisoned and, the Saudi dissident journalist, Jamal Khashoggi was just dismembered. It's, there's a lot on the line for, and Trump's calling journalists the enemies of the people. There's a lot on the line for anybody that's outspoken in this sort of climate, especially in places, I mean, even now the U.S., but you know what the price can be in Russia. I mean, what keeps you fearless?
Oh, that's the thing. I'm not fearless.
Courageous,
actually, we have
at
two.
least.
No, we have two. We have two theoretical approaches to at least two theoretical approaches to the concept of fear inside of Pussy Riot. Because if you will ask Masha Alyokhina, she'll tell you, I don't know what fear is, and she will be honest. Because I think probably her DNA is missing something, so she doesn't know what fear is. And what I do, and I don't like to lie, though I would very much love to tell you all that I don't know what fear is. But I'm afraid of a lot of stuff and afraid of stupid things, like, like I'm afraid to forget the right word when I'm making a public talk. And
So far,
you know
so
what?
good.
And I remember in 2014 when we were physically attacked a couple of times, it actually made me really scared because so I'm a nerd who never actually interacted with even with other kids when I was young, and so I'm really the physical distance is precious to me. And when somebody comes to you and interfere your space and just throws something like acidic liquid into your eyes, it's really not that comfortable to me. And so I remember in 2014, I was really traumatized because of that. I would go in the subway, and every time when somebody touches me, just, there are a lot of people in Moscow, and they're all the time touch you with elbows and stuff like that. And you're all the time thinking that maybe somebody's trying to beat you one more time. But then time passes by and you're normalizing things. And I prefer not to think that much about fear and to get rid of it as much as I can. But I'm not saying that at some point I will not be deadly scared. It is possible to scare me, but I just prefer to manage my fear. So I will be able to stay in Moscow because Moscow is the source of my ultimate inspiration, and I don't want to leave it.
Well, I guess it would have been better for me to ask, despite the dangers, you've remained outspoken, which a lot of people would not do. They would maybe think that it was safer to censor themselves, and but you've continued to be very outspoken, and not only when you're outside of Russia, but when you're inside Russia as well. And I guess your convictions outweigh your fear of the potential consequences. I mean, is that fair to say?
It is, I guess, and that's a part of my identity to be a political activist. I guess if you're decided to become a political activist when you were, I don't know, like 10 years old, it will be really hard to get rid of it because it's like getting rid of your right arm or your leg. It is still possible to leave, but it's not life in its full sense. So right. If I have chance to live full life, well, why don't I do it?
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Can you imagine your life without political art?
No, I can't. And when people say, "What if things get a lot better?" It's like, if I just had to paint sunsets and flowers, fuck, I don't know.
Like what? I just wonder all the time, like when Do you think something about The Handmaid's Tale can happen in America? Or when you think about the worst that can happen here, what are you thinking about?
I think The Handmaid's Tale is very appropriate for right now because, one of the key features of that is the people's reluctance to believe how serious things had gotten until a critical tipping point had already passed, and it was too late to reverse the move towards a conservative authoritarian system. And that's what I always thought was the genius of Orwell in 1984. Is it's so terrifying to read about oppression like that and think about Room 101 and the torture and 2 + 2 = 5 and double think that you would look at your existing system and say, what do I need to do? What actions do I need to take to make sure things never get that way? And yet, look where things are going.
Do you think Trump has any chances on the next elections?
I'd like to say no. I mean, I was actually on a panel with Masha the night before the last election, and I said.
In 2016.
Yeah, and I said.
Yeah, we were here with Masha in LA. It's really stupid that I didn't see you. Yeah, we met this news about Trump as president together with her. Wow. We were at a Mexican bar, and they were super thrilled about it.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I was about to have a nervous breakdown, but I said.
I felt myself something like when I ended up in prison. So for the first one day, the first day you think what the fuck just happened, and then you just gather your strength somehow and think about what can I do about this situation.
Exactly, and I mean there's you can curl up and give up, or you can push forward, and I mean there's a lot in the book about how you dealt with being in prison that I think is it's really powerful. But first I have to just mention that because I actually want to touch on the idea of feminism, and I was on this panel with Masha. There was a lot of talk about feminism, and I thought I was really funny and clever saying, well, hey, the patriarchy had a good run, but there's going to be a big chip in its foundation tomorrow. Oh shit. But I think a lot of people still have misconceptions about feminism. I mean, I consider myself a feminist. I just think that that people should not have to worry about their gender impacting their treatment or equality at all. And if you stand up for that idea, whatever sex you are, if you want women to be treated equally, then you're a feminist, right? I mean, but you, I mean, tell us how you define feminism, and also why you think maybe that there are so many negative reactions to that term. Yeah.
So I define myself as a queer person. I'm one of those who think that women don't have any special essence, and one of those who don't think that having some certain genitalia make you a woman. So for me, the question of sex is really disturbing because it evolves the notion of feminism itself make you think that there are just two genders or two sexes, which is in my universe is far from being that. Mm-hmm. So for me, feminism is something that describes a certain tradition in history that I really value and respect, and I think it was super impactful. But personally, I at some point theoretically I started to talk more about gender equality than about feminism, because I realized that I'm falling into this trap. Like when I'm talking about feminism, I'm talking about, beings who have some sort of essence. And what is the essence? The feminine essence. And not true. But for the sake of simplicity, I do refer to myself as a feminist because I can agree with the movement and sure. But yes, I am for gender equality, and it means that I don't care what gender you want to be, and I will treat you equally no matter. And what gender equality is good for, it is good for convincing even those people who hate feminism for some reason, but you can find a key to them by saying, like, look, gender equality is good for everybody, it's beneficial for everybody, because, like, let's say in Russia, men have to go to army, and women do not have to go to army for some stupid reason. I don't really understand why. And I'm saying, like, yeah, if my government thinks that you should go to army, then I should go to army. But as a matter of fact, I'm against compulsory militarization of society. So yeah, if you want to go to army, you sign a contract and you go to army.
Or voluntary.
Voluntary, yeah, exactly. See, like, I have a lot of fears of forgetting the right word. Yeah, something like that.
You got it in the book. Voluntary enlistment, yeah.
It's much easier to write because you use Google Translator and all sorts of dictionaries.
Her vocabulary in this book is better than most native English speakers, so yeah.
No.
You're false modesty. See, I got to do some reading of my own here. I got this shit from Google, so.
Hopefully, people will not get from this event that I'm against feminism. I'm not. I just think that queer theory is cooler. It's like, it just.
But I mean, gender
takes
equality.
the best from feminism and then evolves it into something bigger and more inclusive.
It's, semantics matter, and if gender equality seems a little more palatable for people, I get it. But to me, when people say Black Lives Matter, well, what about blue lives? What about these? The implication with Black Lives Matter, which I think is very accurate, is that Black lives have been treated as if they don't matter for so long. You wouldn't need a movement called feminism if there weren't so much misogyny. It's basically fulfilling a need that will hopefully go away once there's equality. You could just right now I think the discrimination is. There's discrimination in so many categories, but of course, I think we'd have a Hillary Clinton in the White House if sexism weren't still a really, really big issue. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, like you were too.
Yes.
But regardless, I think it was a really big factor. So, cool. I like gender equality. I'm gonna lift that. But, all right, so you...
Yeah, my problem sometimes with, so even when you're talking about victims of domestic violence, right? In most of cases, we imply that women have to be victims of domestic violence. And by saying that, you implying that women are victims. It's just because semantics matters, and sometimes I just want to be careful with that, because I agree that for the sake of simplicity, like sometimes when you interact, like let's say with Russian government, you about creating a center for victims of domestic violence, you cannot really explain them the whole fucking dictionary. Why do you use queer and why do you use? So I can say, yeah, let's build feminist center. But if you go deeper, then I don't really like when in the end of the story, people start to think that women are victims. No, we're not.
Right. I mean, I think that the some of what you talked about being in prison and the hours you had to work, the quotas for sewing the police uniforms, what people 16-hour work days, right? Until you went on hunger strike, and I will let you actually explain some of this yourself eventually. But you know, the strength of you and your comrades, I mean, it's very, very clear. I can't imagine being in that situation, but I guess everyone adapts to what they have to adapt to survive. But I do think that you should talk a little bit about how you approach that situation. You know, you're mentally to survive, and then philosophically to try to reverse some of the abuses that you saw. I mean, I know you went on hunger strike, but I mean, you had dual things at work. You wanted conditions to be better for everyone, but you also did, I would think, wouldn't want to be singled out for abuse. So I mean, that's a tough thing to reconcile, right? That you've got both of those things going on.
I didn't want to be what? What was the second thing?
I mean, I would assume, I don't want to speak for you, but knowing that if you spoke out against the abuse, you mentioned that in the book that there were individual punishments and collective punishments for the group for dissenters and people who didn't meet the quotas. Mm-hmm. So, just explain how you dealt with all of that.
How did I end up in hunger strike?
Right, exactly, yeah.
First of all, I didn't believe that it might be that difficult to be in prison camp, because when I was in pretrial detention, it was not that easy, but it's relatively okay for people who don't have really serious illnesses. When you do have serious illness, it's much more difficult because that the way how investigators and judges approach you, and they want you to plead guilty. And in that case, they will give you medication that you need. And that's the case, unfortunately. But I had just terrible headaches, so it wasn't, I mean, it was terrible, but it wasn't a life-threatening condition. So, but you're sitting on your jail bed and you're reading something. I was reading Bible because that was the only one book that was available for me at the time. But I didn't complain a lot about it because I thought it's good for me to read Bible because the opposite side accused me of committing hooliganism incited by religious hatred. And I thought it would be really good for me to quote Bible for them. Because in most of cases, they don't really know the Bible. They never opened it. Like Donald Trump, who's saying that it's his favorite book, but I don't think he ever opened it. And so I felt good about it. And so for the first 6 months, I thought that maybe prison is not that bad, because definitely it's not easy to be so far from your family, from your friends. But for me, as for bookworm, it was satisfying that I can spend 12 hours a day with the books. But then they move you to a penal colony, which is in effect labor camp. It didn't change a lot from the Soviet times, because the thing is that never had this sincere wish to change the prison system. They called their state liberal for a while, but I don't really think that this liberalism went deep enough to change something in prison system. So basically, labor in the minds of our government somehow has to help you to get better. Hard labor will somehow help you to get better faster. So to get better really fast, you have to work for 16 hours a day. That's what they think. As far as I know, they think the same thing here. Yeah, because I spoke with people who went through American prisons, and they really differ from state to state. So I cannot talk for every prison here, but I've heard some gloomy stories. But yeah, talking about Russian prisons, I witnessed hell, and I couldn't believe my eyes, because I was like, no, you must be joking, because it cannot be reality. You cannot work for 16 hours a day. No, like maybe just 2 days a month or something. No, their prison officials make women prisoners to sign petitions that they actually very much want to work 16 hours a day. Sure, otherwise they will not be able to call their relatives for the next 2 months if even one will refuse to write such an petition.
I don't like my relatives that much.
Then the next punishment will be to decline your right to wash yourself. So like, in prison you can wash your head once in a week, which is like, just try it once, and you will understand what does it mean to, I don't know, to cook eggs on your head. And you don't have really access to warm water. They give you a little, like, I don't know, 5 liters of water to wash your stuff once a week, and you don't have access to hygiene. And after 2 months, I found myself in penal colony. I found myself completely apathetic. I was broken, seriously. So like, if you ask me if I'm able to fear, if I can be broken, yes, indeed I can. So, but and I was writing in this book about it. I was lucky enough because I found something that changed my life in prison. I was sitting with a magazine at some point, and it was a rare moment because you all the time have to run around, and even at the time when you're not at the factory, you have to still do some useless stuff, like I don't know, just wash something. It's like an army, those old movies about army. So that's what our life is on a daily basis when you're a prisoner. And so I found a moment to open this magazine, and I found an article of Václav Havel, The Power of the Powerless. And it really helps you to understand that you're not alone, that people went through the worst. And I think most of our problems come from egocentrism. And I think I was thinking too much about myself and about my miseries, and I was just pity of myself, and it was wrong in its core, not because it was unethical or something, but because it doesn't help you to think about yourself as a victim.
Right.
And so instead of that I started to empathize to Václav Havel and to the path that he went through, and he actually spent, if I'm right, 5 years in jail. And reading him, how brilliant he went out of jail, and it helped me to maintain my belief in simple fact that life exists after prison. Because when you are in prison, especially in such difficult circumstances, you don't think that anything exists. Just this help. And prison wardens, they know it really good how books can help you. That's why they took away everything from me. So this magazine I literally had to put somewhere, somehow. And it was illegal to take these magazines from me because they were really scared that this information start to grow and like mushrooms, you know, and it did actually, it did, because even prisoners from their different units, though it was strictly forbidden, they may end up in solitary confinement for months because of that. They decided to grab these political magazines, and at some point I would come to the room and they would sit there and discuss like some recent political reforms and tell me about stuff that I have no idea about. And it gave me understanding, another really important understanding about the importance of information and actually good media resources. Because at the point when the people are not idiots, and like, I'm like, why on earth our government will think that we are idiots? Like, where did they find? Anyway, they started to change their opinions on politics really fast. So within 2 months, the picture was completely different. And so yeah, when we got out of prison, we thought between me, Masha, and Petya Fertilov that it would be really amazing to start a media outlet and provide non-fake news.
And you did that, and Media Zona, and then Zona Prava is the criminal justice reform charity that you started also. How I mean, how did you put that together? What are your is it a lot of volunteers? Do you have the normal structures of donations? All this. I mean, how does it work?
Do you want to tell? No. Read is from Media Zona, and she's here. So I just asked her if she wanted to tell about it, but no, she doesn't. We started. We just collected all our money from speaking engagements and from the festivals, and like, you know, when you go to Glastonbury, they want to pay you something, and so instead of buying a yacht, we decided to just put all this money to Media Zona, because we didn't feel like we own this money anyway, because the people gave us voice and they gave us name, and it's not really our name. It's like it's the voice of all those people who supported us when we were in prison. So we thought it's not something that we own, and we have to give it somewhere else to amplify this voice and just to keep amplifying the activists' voice. And that's how we run it right now too. But we started to take donations from Russian citizens just recently, like one year ago, for the first time. That editor-in-chief of Media Zona, Sergei Smirnov, he decided that okay, like at this time I will allow myself to take money from people who read Media Zona. It's not obligatory; you don't have to pay in order to read. But yeah, we started to ask for donations, and before that, we were just too coy to do it. And Zona Prava is dedicated to prison reform, and we were investigating if it's possible to make another prison system, and we were traveling a lot in different countries, and we're investigating what's up in prisons here. And what really struck me, how ex-Stasi prison is structured in Germany. And so basically, Stasi is like KGB thing, and people were killed and tortured there 20-something years ago. But right now, you see something that looks more like a student dormitory, and people, like prisoners, they have right to walk freely within the prison. And I asked them, "What is your main complaint about this prison?" And they told me that the main complaint is that the prison warden promised to give an access to internet 2 months ago, and he still didn't do it. And like, whoa, yeah, that's a really big trouble. And I knew that it is indeed like what they were telling me is true, because they were talking with me in Russian, and the prison wardens could talk in German, so they were quite honest with me. And also asked them, what if you have an affair with somebody, like prisoners with another prisoner, and will they put you in solitary confinement because of that? And because that's what happened with me when I had an affair. And it's extremely prohibited, and it's illegal to have same-sex affairs in Russian prison. It's not like that in German prison. You can write an application and they will allow you to live in one room together, which is not a bad deal.
No, it's not. I mean, when I look at Germany, where it is now free education through college, and 35% of the country's powered by renewables, and there's stipends for artists, and yet their economy hasn't collapsed. All the arguments that are made against those things here. I mean, really, when you think that a lot of Americans still consider, Germany in relation to, Hitler and the time, that fascism. The fact that Germany's been able to evolve so significantly is actually, I think, very inspiring. But the will has to be there. People have to push that, and that's there's a concept that you have in your book that that you have to have word and deed functioning together, and it's. In the 80s, I used to love the stencil, talk minus action equals 0. I do think, actually, that words make a difference, but they only make a difference if they open someone's mind to the importance of action with the words. And, I'm curious what you think about the best communication strategies, and the best ways to motivate people to act, because I think the irony of social media is that it's democratized things and given so many people a voice. So free speech is not a problem for a lot of people, but then that leading to action, a lot of people are fine with just creating a social media image for themselves. It's sort of it becomes like the symbol or the avatar for actual action that never leads to the action, which I find incredibly problematic. Even though I use social media, I know you do too. I assume you followed your Twitter and stuff, but it's. I mean, do you have a strategy for helping to motivate people beyond to act rather than just to talk?
I just don't retweet. No, I don't retweet words, but I retweet real actions. So that's I think my strategy.
Well, I mean,
but we talk. Like I'm not against social networks, as you're not against too. But I think it's always better when it comes together and one amplifies another.
I couldn't agree more. I mean,
and just people who only write stuff, they're just not cool, and we're not following them, and we're following and retweeting and quoting those people who actually combine these two things together. So that's the strategy, and I don't have anything more sophisticated actually.
But you talked about the concept of doublethink in the book, and I think that what's really great that you discuss in the book is, the idea that when we're living in competition, we're not living in collaboration. And I'm frequently looking at how, yes, I love to do things that that people say, I like that piece of art, I like this thing, the way you think on this, but I'm trying to make these things in service of understanding that we're social creatures and we need each other. So even my more narcissistic impulses, I try to channel constructively. But that idea that that people have, that they want peer validation, they want social validation, yet they also but they also want to be selfish anytime they want to be selfish. So they want to receive and not give. I thought it was great that you really pushed that idea, and also some of the I thought it was very funny that you said when you were interviewed in the Vogue interview that it's so bourgeois. But I'm joking, but I thought it was a very good interview and good to put
to be interviewed with Vogue.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like old-fashioned things. Like right now, the good people, they're disseminated.
Oh, I know. I'm fucking with you. But anyway, you said you said they asked you what you do for fun, for play, and you said that it's a capitalist construct, the difference between work and play. And I tend to I'm lucky that I make pictures for a living. I'm playing all the time. But it's talk a little bit about how what your strategies are. I think art is a big strategy, right? To get people to consider the benefit of you work in a collaborative way as an artist. Consider collaboration and work and play being completely integrated.
Just recently I was in shrooms in Sagrada Familia, and I was looking at their guard in Sagrada Familia for 3 hours, and I was thinking about alienation of labor, and I started to feel myself like pretty terrible, because I understood that most of people, I understood how extremely privileged I am, and it's not news, but when you're in such a beautiful building and you see a person who's just a function, and basically his life doesn't belong to him, and it is pretty scary, and I don't really understand why it is still the case, because as far as I understand, artificial intelligence can do a lot of things for us, and at least to guard the wall, I think it can be done without involvement of human being. So I believe that there should be some other reasoning for our governments to involve human labor, because it's, as far as I know, even 3 dozen years ago, sociologists were writing that in our times, in the beginning of 21st century, even people will not have to work for longer than 4 hours a day, but they still work for over than 8 hours a day, which is maybe it is done exactly for not allowing us to collaborate more and to be part of stronger communities. How do you work with your narcissistic impulses? Because I feel myself as everybody, I think, in our society, I feel myself extremely guilty with these impulses. It's just we are bombarded by this wish to think about yourself all the time. And I know there's a crazy meme like this Bernie Sanders V-phone, but I would definitely use V-phone if I would be able to. What about you?
Well, I want to. I guess I want to find a way to make the narcissism secondary, not primary. So if I make something I'm proud of that people connect to, they go, "Yeah, hey, I like that," and then I go, "Yeah, that was all me." So I get to be a little bit narcissistic about it, but without it maybe being selfish, totally selfish. I mean, I think everyone wants to feel good about, stand behind who they are, and that can border on narcissism. But we also, I mean, we live in cultures where how we look, our social standing, the things we consume, we're defined by all of that. And you talk in the book about how much better things would be if there were more creators, and not everyone defined themselves through what they consume. But I think a lot of people they're fearful to create. So because when you create, you're taking a risk that people will not like it. And does everyone love your music?
I don't like my music.
Yeah, I mean, I've been called a plagiarist, derivative, unqualified to talk on the topics I talk about. You name it. Every possible strategy to dismiss me, and but I think that frequently reveals the lack of imagination and the fearfulness of the person saying it. So I tend to every now and then somebody says something really smart where I'm like, fuck, they got me. But but usually I think it's to justify their own fear and complacency. And I mean, you talk about that, but the being having the courage to just express yourself is not as common as it ought to be. I mean, rage about various things, I guess, is common, and I don't. That's not the kind of expression I mean. I mean creative expression, but anyway, I mean, I wanted to mention actually that I was just in Moscow for the first time, and
it sucked badly that I wasn't in Moscow at the time.
Well, you might have been able to guide me through some of the things. Like I was doing a mural on an oligarch's mall, and I don't know what you think about that.
Where was it?
It's the Atrium. Do you know that mall?
Mm-hmm.
But I did a portrait of Vladimir Mayakovsky, your high school crush that you mentioned,
wow.
and it's insane. I hadn't read her book, but she talks about Bertolt Brecht and his quote, "Art is not a mirror to reflect society, but a hammer with which to shape it," which was one of Mayakovsky's favorite quotes. So I did a portrait of Mayakovsky with that Brecht quote, and she talks about both of them in the book. It's kind of trippy, but I think that everything requires a willingness to understand that you could be perceived as contradicting yourself or as a hypocrite pretty much anywhere you try to navigate, and especially because I wasn't familiar enough with Moscow. Was that just this thing, or was that like, okay, time's up, guys?
Yeah, it's a start of punk concert.
But the one of the things.
No, I think it's cool that you made this art for Connection. Like I remember when it was time of Olympic Games in Moscow, and lots of my friends from different parts of the world are asking me if they should go to Moscow, they should go to Sochi, or they should not. And my answer is always proactive. Like if you can come and still make yourself heard without compromising what you're about to say. Like if you would be about to go to Atrium and make a picture, and then this Russian oligarch would come to you and say, like, look, Shepard, you understand.
Yeah. Well, I want to just finish this one thing, because I don't know how many of you have spent time in Russia. That was my first time in Russia. One of the things that I was struck by was how ridiculous a lot of the U.S. propaganda is about Russia. That no one smiles. Everyone's wearing a gray work smock. There's brutalist architecture everywhere. Everyone has their head down. It's ridiculous. Moscow's a beautiful city, incredible architecture. I met a lot of great people. But one thing I did realize, I did a large museum show for almost 400 pieces of work. A lot of it's about abuse of authority, environmental destruction, the need for campaign finance reform, a lot of the issues you talk about in your book. And yet, still, the audience that was there praising my work also asked me, hey, you did the Hope poster for Obama. Would you ever do a poster for Putin? These are people who double think, once again. They can look at my work, understand that my work is about promoting analysis, dissent, justice, and yet still they can be Putin supporters. And when I asked them, because I tried to be very delicate and diplomatic, I said, well, so you like Putin? And said, oh yeah, things were way worse before Putin was president. There was so much corruption, and this is a good bit of corruption still, right? And so much, it was so dangerous. Everything was run by gangsters. But I was just curious what your feeling is about why. And I know that you say in the book that a lot of Russians are not Putin supporters but they don't want to say it because they're fear of reprisal, right? But I mean, for the ones that are Putin supporters, where do you think that's coming from?
Yeah, indeed. Putin created this story about terrible 90s, and he refers a lot to that. And partly it is true, but we didn't have real democracy. We had a shock economy. We had crazy American Chicago boys coming to Russia and telling Russians what to do. And basically, these dear Chicago boys came to my country and they said, like, oh, you need to lose all your money to start democracy. And that's what they done. So for a lot of Russians, still, there is a strong connection between the notion of democracy and the times when they lost everything what they got in the Soviet Union. And Putin was pretty fortunate when he came to his first term, and their oil and gas prices were skyrocketing. He's not that fortunate right now because these prices are falling down, so he's having troubles, and that's why he had to make the retirement age higher, so he's taking a number of unpopular reforms. But in the beginning of his term, he didn't mention that it happened mostly because of just oil and gas prices. But he was like, "Yeah, that's just because I'm so cool." And so yes, of course, if you are the head of the country for 18 years, you're creating this story. And right. There is no big space for critical thinking because our independent press is not influential enough, because it's just designed not to be influential.
Well,
it's just basically like media.
It's up to you. Right.
Yes.
Okay. You're just not single-handedly solving the problem, Nadya.
It's 1 million unique visitors a month Mediazona has now, so we're moving step by step. Yeah, it's not that bad for media outlet that was started by punks. I didn't believe myself that we will do something, because I was like, what we can do in our lives is just to make terrible music and illegal concert. Like, how could we think on Earth that we can make a media outlet? But we somehow made it, and it is a really big thing for me. It's a big achievement, not just for me, but for. I mean, think about it. If you're just a little bit smarter than just a bunch of punks, and if you have more organizational skills, how much can you achieve? And that was the idea behind a lot of our actions, including the storming of the White House, when we decided to just project skull and bones on the White House of Russian Federation, Russian Parliament. Giant skull and bones, like 40 meters wide and 40 meters high, and we climbed over the fence, 6-meter fence, and we ran on the territory and just disappeared into the night, and they couldn't catch us. And so the idea was to show that actually our parliament and the power itself is much more vulnerable than they like to think they are. So coming back to your question, I think this story about Putin as a savior of Russia is pretty popular, but honestly, I don't think I don't meet a lot of people who really support Putin, because if you just walk in Moscow and meet random people, like most of them, they would bitch about Putin. But the thing is that they don't have this set of tools that can help them to change the power. Like we never had the chance to learn how democratic institutions can work. We never had this democratic institution, so the only one thing that we know that at some point when we will be really fed up with everything, we'll just go to the main square of the city and scream really loudly and hope that our power will be scared of us. But we don't really know a thing about this, civil society stuff, blah, blah, like how it works. We don't know it, but
well,
that's what we should improve.
I mean, I think that the, from everything that you've experienced with the suppression of voices of dissent, is that, when you do have the power to participate like we do here, even though the system is rigged for very powerful rich people, if there were full voter participation, things would look very different, because the people who are controlling each branch of government right now don't reflect the values and the policy desires of the majority of the American public. So, yeah, once again, vote. But let's take some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What's the Russian consciousness? I have friends who are tech experts, and I know manipulating the votes for those few states that won this election for Trump is not a difficult thing to do. I also know there's no evidence because nobody looked. What's the Russian consciousness about their country actually having won this election?
Okay, so for all those who couldn't hear, the question is, what is the level of Russian consciousness about the manipulation of the 2016 election? Is that a fair paraphrase?
Okay. Is the question, what do Russian people think about Russian interference in the... I would say Russian people don't really, like, they're so fed up hearing about other countries' affairs, so they want somebody to think about, like, what they're living, like, how do they live? They don't want to think about their salaries and stuff like that, but they're on the TV, they're all the time hear this information about what's going on in the United States, what's going on in Syria, and I think for just a normal Russian people, I don't know, like for one half of them is just some crazy but interesting movie that is not really connected to their reality anyhow, and for other people it's just nothing because they're not connected to it, and they just think that it's just crazy propaganda. They don't want to have anything to do with it. So I don't think that there is a space for most of the Russian people to really think about Trump and Putin's interference in American politics.
How do you tread forward in light of, I'm sure you've received like people in your life at some points like telling you maybe, or I don't know if you have, people telling you to kind of like tone yourself down, like people that try to police your actions or discourage you from your radicalness. How have you dealt with that and used it to propel yourself in what you do in order to remain like this inspiration?
I escaped from my mom when I was 16 years old, and she was the first person who told me that I shouldn't be that radical. And then later, I think when you don't have to live with your parents, it's a little bit easier because you just don't talk with them. If you don't want to listen to them, then when I was 14 years old, I decided for myself that I don't want to live life that is pre-designed for me by anybody, because I thought that there are so many people around, like millions of people around, and that they're all. And you somehow have to design for yourself a unique life, so you shouldn't hear to anybody's advices and to just put yourself in different contexts. And so maybe in the end of the story you will be able to find some sort of truth after you will learn about so many different contexts. So I'm just jumping from one country to another, from one sort of activity to another, and I just taught myself pretty early not to listen to those people who are telling me that it's not appropriate to mix this stuff, because that's the whole thing for me. I want to mix stuff because I think that's the way to find something unique. Because if I would just stay in my hometown and I would be defined by my mother and maybe, I don't know, maybe by my university, and that's it. And now I'm defined by so many influences and people, including Shepard.
I wish. Anyway, we are like siblings from different continents, though. Like reading her book, I was like, shit, this is all stuff that I think, but she's just articulated it a lot better. Not as a native English speaker either, but anyway.
Kind of a flip side of the first question. Since 2016, a lot of people in this country have blamed Hillary Clinton's loss on Putin. And to what extent do you think it was Putin's fault, and to what extent do you think it's because she wasn't a very good candidate?
I don't like Hillary Clinton. I think it was really bad choice of Democratic Party. I didn't really understand how all those really clever and educated people could make such a terrible choice. And after that choice, I started to feel better about me not having a high education, because I was put in prison like in the end of my high education, so I don't have diploma or something like that, no official paper. And I always thought about this Ivy League people, like, oh, they should be some like the wonderful creatures from different planet. They can talk on 5 languages, and I cannot talk even on one properly. And then after that, I just was like, whoa, if they could be such an idiots, then I'm totally fine. I think Putin definitely interfered in American elections because that's what he's designed for, and it's not for America is not unique in his line of countries where he interfered, like Ukraine and Montenegro and France and Marine Le Pen. But I don't think, honestly, that Putin is the reason why Trump is the president of United States. And Hillary Clinton was not the brightest candidate. And I mean,
but I don't think
Democratic Party is like it went so liberal, it went so central, right? It's not for the workers, it's not for the leftist people anymore. So people who are against the system, they didn't know what to do, and they voted for Trump, and it just makes perfect sense.
Well, I don't think it makes perfect sense, but I do think that maybe. I mean, clearly, the American public is not choosing the leaders based on the values I think are important in leadership. I mean, maybe Hillary wasn't stupid enough. I mean, maybe she didn't say enough dumb things. I mean, I do think that the dissatisfaction with the two-party system both parties have I think failed to stop the widening of wage stagnation and wealth inequality. All the gains in the economy have gone to the top, usually less than 1% for the last 35 years. But I wasn't a Hillary supporter either. But I think that the big factor with Trump is that he's a celebrity who appealed to people on a very primitive level, and I'm not sure how if that's going to be the new standard. I don't even know how we recover really. But can we all be civilized? Can we appreciate human dignity? Can we appreciate facts, knowledge? I mean, it seems like really basic stuff to me. But I mean, I think Hillary was not utilizing her Ivy League education in a lot of aspects of that, because that's not the currency that Americans value. But anyway, yeah.
As far as I know, people like Hillary or people who are surrounding Hillary, they still somehow refer to some part of American society as white trash, and it was like, for me, whoa, like really, how can you think about being a president if you do things like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was on both sides. I mean, there's a lot of mudslinging happening, but...
No, I'm not saying that Trump, Trump, I don't even want to discuss Trump, because
no, but I agree.
Everything is understandable.
In the book, she talks about Trump being a symptom of deeper problems, and I mean, I agree with that completely. There's, it's far too much to discuss in the short amount of time we have before you have to start signing books, but yeah. Yeah, you.
I wanted to ask you if there is a lot of awareness in Russia about climate change.
No.
And have you thought of incorporating that issue in any of your actions or your performances? I mean, because you did mention it when we first started talking. I mean, you're young. Do you think about it a lot? Is it something that you like, that you feel that the Russian people hopefully might wake up? I mean, we're trying to do it here. I don't know how well we're doing it, but anyway.
It's an amazing question. But it is symptomatically. I remember when I came to climate change demonstration in New York for the first time. It was, I think, 2014. I was thinking about myself as a really progressive person and blah blah and stuff, like, that. But I remember being like, why do they care that much about climate change when people are being tortured? Like, what the fuck is going on? And then I started to read deeper about it, because and it's symptomatic because it shows how Russian activists like the average Russian activist is far from thinking about climate change. Surely we do have like anti-fascist groups and environmental groups, but they're like super small. And if you think about an average anti-Kremlin activist, I would say like 70% of them would probably think that climate change is not real, or they never really thought about climate change. I remember after staying in Los Angeles for almost 8 months in a row, definitely at that, and after that time, I learned everything about climate change, obviously. So I came to Russia, and I'm like, and and I came to the Echo of Moscow, and I was interviewed by people who I know for a long time, and we started to talk about Bernie Sanders, and they're like, yeah, but he's just like terrible socialist. I'm like, what? and then I started like, yeah, but you don't understand that the climate change, and like, do you believe in this mythology about climate change? Like, are you that stupid? It's just a myth to stop our great progress. I'm like, whoa, guys, you're claiming that you're the most progressive radio station in Russia. And I was like, should I punch them in the face right now, or should I do it a little bit later? And I didn't, and it's a good thing that I didn't, because that's the thing. We should respect each other even if we don't agree on some sort of stuff. But it was really shocking, but yeah. I think we were in a little bit different position in 90s, because I remember when I was a kid, I was reading some Greenpeace literature, but then when Putin came to power, it all disappeared somehow.
But I know you're a fan of Naomi Klein. Have you read This Changes Everything? Her book, Climate Change versus Capitalism. I mean, I think that's a very, very compelling book in terms of the research both about climate science, but also how wired capitalism is to increase consumption and resist anything that would harm the bottom line when we're on a planet with growing population and dwindling resources. So that was a real wake-up book for me. I mean, I already was doing a lot of stuff around environmental concerns, but I think that's one of the best books about it. So yeah, if you like Naomi Klein, check it out. You pick the next person. I'm going to be hated for excluding anyone, so I'll let you take that on.
How you're supposed to do it? Do you know how to do it? Debbie, can you help?
In the back over there. In the hat. Yeah.
And you're the next. Like where? Do you have a house for me?
We'll find a house for you.
I don't mind having a vacation house in LA, but yeah, you probably talk about people who two activists from Pussy Riot who went to Sweden, and they seek for asylum in Sweden. Yeah, and I just met another activist from the same region. It's like this terrible politically southern region, Kuban, from Sochi. Like everybody's just trying to escape from Sochi as fast as they can. And I met another Pussy Riot activist. He's right now a refugee in Madrid. because after Sochi Olympic Games, when we were beaten by Kazakhs, he's from Sochi, and he stayed in Sochi, and he was intimidated. He'd been told that he will be put in prison, and nobody will care about you, because everybody will care about them because they're known. And it's not true, because we would make a big political campaign to support him, so he will become known as well. And but he decided to emigrate. Why do I decide? I don't know. It's not really a rational choice. It is an irrational choice of an artist. I just feel like it's important for my
I think
artistic.
I don't think you're giving yourself
Like-
enough credit. I mean, I think that it's the determination not to succumb to the very forces you've been protesting the whole time is, it's meaningful. It's very meaningful to do that. So, your activism began in Russia, and you have a commitment to it. So, don't try to talk about vacation houses in LA. It's a little more meaningful than that. But also, I mean,
It's not meaningful. Like, seriously, like I like vacations. Like, today I was lying in the sun, and I was swimming in the pool, and now thinking like I should do it, because I never know when the next prison term will happen, or then the next hospital or something. And I remember I was reading, and I will be killed right now for this reference. I was reading Eduard Limonov, and he's pretty bad now politically, but he's an amazing writer anyway. So I remember when I was far from my prison, I was reading him, and he served 2 years in prison at the time. So every Russian artist or writer, they have to serve some time in prison. So, and I remember reading him, and I was like 17 years old, and he wrote, like, after prison I started to love life even more. And I remember thinking, like, making conspects and putting them somewhere in my memory form. I decided that if I will go to prison and come back, I will start to enjoy life much more. So that it happened, actually. So I like LA, but it's not like why would I be here? Like why why would I even exist? Like, what?
well, I mean,
To play in
I know that
Hollywood movie? Like what?
we got to wrap this up, but your knowledge of international politics, it's pretty impressive. I think that you were talking about different contexts. The benefit of travel is realizing that there are a lot of the same human qualities in different places, and a lot of the same struggles. The structures might be different, but a lot of it, I think it creates a lot of empathy for other human beings when you consider yourself a world citizen, not a nationalist from your native country. So your commitment to Russia, I think, is great, but also your sort of general awareness of what's going on in other places. That's a lot of people they can be spoon-fed whatever powerful people want them to accept because they don't have any perspective. So you've got perspective at least.
We somehow
Perspective
need
right
to give these people money in order to allow them to travel, because the biggest problem for most of the Russians who never traveled abroad, and they will never travel abroad in their lifetime because they just can't afford themselves to do it. That's why it's that easy for Putin to spoon-feed them with all this anti-Western propaganda. Should we just make a fundraiser for every Russian to travel to America?
Hi. You said something just now about enjoyment, and I think I'm inspired by your music, because I think like there's a lot of currency in joy, and I'm sort of curious, like what are you looking looking forward to that brings joy, that brings like that forgetting of all of the problems in the world, that kind of like where you can express like the joy of living and life and just like what is that for you?
I don't know. Recently, I was listening to Ghost Main, which is like this rapper guy who is writing about death and I don't know, Satan and I don't know. But it's really joyful to me because I think maybe art is the answer. Because for me, being joyful is not necessarily to listen to stuff about birds and So I think art. Yeah, and I remember when I was a kid, and I was growing up in this really interesting place where I didn't have access. I wasn't able to go to the street and just walk because you can be at home or you can be at school and that's it. You don't have other choices. So I was making friends with the books and my favorite characters from the books. So I think art was my door to do the joy from the very beginning. And in prison too.
And in prison too, yeah. And where can we see, or where can we look forward to more of your music?
Oh, we are planning something in November. Yeah, we were planning to release some stuff in November, and then after that we will just close ourselves in our Russian bunker. And we were going to record more stuff, but I think it will be all just in Russian, so you will have to learn Russian in order to understand it.
Google Translate all the Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.